When many of us wrestling fans look back at a company, whether now or previously, at its most shocking moments or controversial moments, even years later, we still find ourselves talking about it. I mean, how many moments in wrestling have we seen? We had the Montreal Screwjob, we had the curtain call, but despite many moments within one company, there's usually moments in another company that came and went that people still talk about, despite that company has been long since gone. It was back in 2000, WCW Bash at the Beach, where we saw a very controversial moment involving Vince Russo, Jeff Jarrett, and Hulk Hogan. This whole thing has been talked about mostly on the 83 Weeks podcast in the past by Eric Bischoff. There's been shoots on other channels from Hulk Hogan, Vince Russo. And at the time, WCW, it's well known, they were not doing very good. In fact, they were financially on their last limbs and they were losing money. They were not having the ratings anymore. The longtime fan base had now seen enough of WCW and felt their heyday, their time has passed. And they were all going to WWE at the time, which was doing red hot. But WCW, despite its financial decline, they had some stuff wrong with it that most of us wrestling fans remember being the reason why we tuned away. Case in point, Hulk Hogan. It's no secret by this point in time, Hulk Hogan's ring work had not really been the greatest. In fact, it was declining. Hulk Hogan was seen as an aging superstar who was not stepping down for the greater good. He was a guy who many felt was about himself before the company. And along with the fact is, at the time, we know that Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff were running Control. They were supposed to work together. They were supposed to come up with an ending to an angle. And of course, when they couldn't agree to something, Brad Siegel was the one that made the decision to break the tie. The problem here is it's well known that Hulk Hogan did not want to leave without the WCW championship, as he was supposed to be in a match with Jeff Jarrett. Of course, when the match started, Jeff Jarrett came out, laid down for Hulk Hogan. Russo was outside the ring holding the belt up like this. Nobody knows what was going on. Hogan was looking at Russo weirdly and looking at Jarrett. He puts his foot on him. 1, 2, 3. Jarrett shoots up, goes right to the back. He wasn't in his chosen one heel gimmick. He was just Jeff Jarrett. Hogan grabs the microphone. Is this your idea of a joke, Russo? This is why this company is in the bullshit it's in because of stuff like this. Or the company's in the situation it is because of bullshit like this. And of course, after the whole thing came and went, nobody knows what was going on. The announcers had said that it was not part of the show. Fast forward, later on in the show, we see Vince Russo come out to the ring. He cuts a shoot on Hulk Hogan, says Hulk Hogan wanted to play his creative control card and not do business. Russo said that Hulk Hogan would never be seen again on WCW television. A new title was going to be created. And later in the main event, we would have Booker T versus Jeff Jarrett. Booker T already wrestled early in the show. He's wrestling again, and WCW said, we're going to put the belt on Booker T because it's the right time. Nobody had a problem with it. Despite the fact that Booker T and Jeff Jarrett had a great match, years later, Eric Bischoff came out in a shoot and said the shoot that Vince Russo did was never part of the show. They never worked it out into an angle. The plan was for Hulk Hogan to walk out in an angle with Eric Bischoff. They would get on a plane and leave, and it would be a storyline walkout. And of course, Russo came out to the ring unknowingly when Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff had landed. Their phones were blowing up, and apparently they saw what Russo did. And Eric Bischoff's words was, Vince Russo went into business for himself. But here's another problem. Years later, Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff still did shoots on each other. They still did this whole thing where they talked about their problems going from WCW to TNA. But it's well known Russo and Bischoff did not get along creatively from the very beginning. That is what I think was really what caused all this. You have Eric Bischoff, who is a Hulk Hogan guy, a supporter of Hulk Hogan. It's no secret that Bischoff pushed Hogan to the moon and all the other talents were kept second. If Hulk Hogan did not like a plan, he plays the creative control card. And that is really what led to all of this. Eric Bischoff came from a wrestling company. Vince Russo had just came down from the Jerry Springer WWE to be a part of WCW. Many have said that Russo was planted by Vince McMahon to sabotage WCW, which I don't agree with because WCW was already in decline before Russo ever came in. Not that I'm a Vince Russo fan. I don't like the way the man did things in some parts of wrestling. I was never a Russo follower. I wasn't an Eric Bischoff follower, but that shoot that night that Russo did, you got to really admit that he was on to something. The longtime fan base was frustrated with Hulk Hogan. Hogan wasn't stepping down. Hogan was the one they kept at the top. Even during the Millionaires Club versus the New Blood storyline. Remember that? All these old veterans were facing off against the younger talents, led by Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff. Quite possibly, it was a sign really when both of Russo and Bischoff were on TV. Even though they were heels, you could easily see the friction between those two. That's one of the main reasons why all this happened. Eric Bischoff has even claimed that Vince Russo went through with the meeting at WCW Bash at the Beach when Bischoff was running late because he had to go to his father's funeral. He said Russo started the meeting in the production, and apparently it was just more fire added, or gasoline on the fire added between Bischoff and Russo. But the problem also is you throw on the fact that Hulk Hogan did not want to do business. Say what you will. Many of us were tired of that. And it's interesting. People have bashed Bret Hart for years for not doing business and leaving WWE the way that many felt he should have, despite the fact is there were a lot of details that WWE kept out of that. And fast forward several years later, or a few years later, Hogan is leaving under a different set of circumstances, but there still is controversy, and that man did not want to do business. You don't have to like Jeff Jarrett, but let's be honest here. The real reason why all that happened is because Jeff Jarrett is a better wrestler than Hulk Hogan. And it's a well-known fact that Hulk Hogan was protected when he got in the ring with some of these guys that were better wrestlers than him. The matches had to end quick because Hulk Hogan did not have a moveset. A body slam, a suplex, a big boot, and a leg drop. That was it. Combined with the fact that Hulk Hogan was already aging at this point. He was not the young guy anymore that he once was. Now, am I not getting it that Hulk Hogan felt maybe he was a big enough star to where he didn't have to put people over? I get that. A certain time comes where Hulk Hogan and other talents, they get to that point in their careers and they don't want to give back. But shoot or reel or planned storyline, it's hard to say whether or not WCW Bash the Beach did not allude to stuff that we really were beginning to think. Or was it something that just came out of the blue to where it opened our eyes to what was really going on that we were all blinded to? WCW's mismanagement. You have an aging wrestler who did not want to give back. It was a huge cluster of a mess. Yes, Booker T and Jeff Jarrett delivered a great main event match. No doubt about it. It helped save that pay-per-view. But that pay-per-view is forever overshadowed by what Hulk Hogan was refusing to do. You have Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo that couldn't get along half the time. You go watch the 83 Weeks podcast where Eric Bischoff is talking about the problems that stem from that heading into TNA. It was a bad idea to have Bischoff and Russo together. It was going to fail from the very beginning. You can't take these two personas of different points of wrestling and try to get them to work together. That's like putting Vince McMahon and Ted Turner in a room and trying to work a business deal out despite the fact both of them hated each other. It was never good for business. And that right there is what led to all of this crap hitting the fan that time. And say what you will, the whole thing really opened our eyes that there are moments in wrestling, whether real or scripted, that are going to have us talk for a long time. I was never a Russo fan. I was never a Bischoff fan. I lost major support and respect for Hulk Hogan a lot longer before all that ever happened. But you got to admit, when those moments happen in wrestling, they get us talking no matter good or bad. And that is the point of this video. How did you feel about WCW Bash at the Beach 2000? How did you feel about Hulk Hogan walking out? Tell me what you think in the comment section. Thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you later.